You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, episode 53. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
It's only a matter of time before we're replaced by soulless machines, but for now, you have us on this week's episode of the Tricorder Transmissions, the Ultimate Computer. I'm Craig Cohen.
And I'm Jeff Hewlett.
So, Jeff, here we are.
Yeah, man, 53 episodes in. We're getting real close to the end of season 2. Only, I think, 4 more episodes to go.
Yeah, and, it's funny. I was, I watched these on Blu-ray, and I was like, man, I've been on the Blu-ray disc I had been watching. I was like, man, it's been a while since I had to go to the case for another disc. And sure enough, the Ultimate Computer starts the last disc of the Blu-ray set. So I was like, oh, we're pretty close to the end of the season.
Yeah, nothing signifies it more than getting to that back of the box and pulling the last disc off of the back cover of the box. So we're going to be getting ready for our season 2 wrap-up real soon. So this has been going by really, really fast. Can't believe we've been doing this over a year already.
I know. And speaking of that wrap-up show, I know we have some great stuff planned for that. Some returning voices, some new voices.
Oh.
And if you'd like to be a part of that, interact with us over on our Facebook page or via Twitter. And maybe we'll use your thoughts on the season wrap-up.
Yeah, that's we're looking to get more listener participation this time around because we've got a bigger listener base at this point. So we're hoping we're going to have a lot of people to cut into these episodes and kind of argue against what we voted on these episodes. So we don't want to say we're the definitive voices on these, but if you have reasons that you disagree with us, definitely let us know, and we're going to have that stuff on that season 2 wrap.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That's always a cool little sequence of episodes. I think back to the season one we did and how much fun that was to produce, but then also listen back to.
Yeah, that was a fun couple of episodes, and it was nice to recap and rethink our votes and see if we had to change anything. And of course, we famously did change one vote, but I won't dwell on that. And I will jump into there's a couple of news items, not a hell of a lot going on this week.
All right.
Well, by the time this episode reaches the air, the Shatner Chaos on the Bridge documentary will have already aired in Canada, and not in the U.S. yet or anywhere else, but just in Canada. So we can assume that it's going to be available elsewhere in the near future, I hope.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that for anybody who hasn't listened to our last episode, that would be a documentary that William Shatner is putting together, or has put together rather, on the making of the Next Generation show. So he's kind of getting away from the original series and exploring the creation and bringing to air of the Next Generation. And it sounds like a really cool documentary, but we've already talked about that quite a bit, so let's not belabor that. And it looks like the 3rd issue of the City on the Edge of Forever comic is coming out soon. That's cool. Harlan Ellison's original City on the Edge of Forever script being made into a comic book. The first 2 issues have been out a while. I have both of them. They're phenomenal. I'm looking forward to the 3rd one. It looks like we've got the same situation. We've got a Juan Ortiz cover, and we've got an alternate cover. So they're sticking with that. And I'm looking forward to getting a copy of that.
Yeah. I know you've been getting the episodes individually, and you had even started putting that together out in Vegas at the convention. So at this point, it looks like I'll be waiting for what will hopefully be a collected trade edition of it.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll put one of those out at the end. I am looking forward to having all of the issues separately so I can kind of bag them and kind of hang them on a wall or something. They would look really nice, like in a frame or something.
Oh, totally. And you have that issue too, signed by Harlan Ellison and Juan Ortiz. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, very cool. The artwork is gorgeous on these. So if you're interested in that stuff, definitely head out and pick them up. They're beautifully illustrated, and I couldn't be happier with the ones I have. So
yeah, well, actually, and for those that aren't 100% familiar with what this comic book's doing is it's not just a retelling of the episode, The City on the Edge of Forever. This is actually based on Ellison's original teleplay that was altered substantially for Star Trek. So you're getting Ellison's vision before it was made suitable for TV.
Yeah, well, essentially so, yeah. So when during our commentary for City on the Edge of Forever, Craig delved a bit into some of the differences between the original Ellison teleplay and what wound up becoming the official episode, and it mentioned a crew member by the name of Beckwith who didn't make it into the final episode. He was actually replaced by McCoy. Yeah. And this comic centers around this essentially rogue crew member. I'm not going to ruin the script for anybody who hasn't read this yet or isn't up on this. So it's a completely different feel. In fact, it's almost a bit darker.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, it's really great that they're able to do this. I know Harlan had published his screenplay, which is where I got a lot of the information that I got from. But it's really great to see that they're actually doing this in a as close to a cinematic or, televised way that they can. And comic books are really a great way to do this. I know a lot of TV shows that aren't on the air anymore and, unproduced scripts get second life as sort of comic books. So it's really cool to see. And it's a trend that I'm really, I'm all for. If it gets us more stories out there, it's cool because, the novels that they do are always good, but they don't always deliver the experience of watching a movie or a TV episode, because books are so much different in the sense that you're creating things, whereas a comic book, you're being really led by the writer and the artist. So it's really the perfect, well, aside from recreating the episode, the comic is really the best way to reproduce Ellison's original teleplay.
Yeah, I agree totally. So we're not going to keep talking about this, but get out there and pick them up because they're excellent. So we usually don't do a lot of merchandise news. We kind of swore that off a while ago, but this thing caught my eye, Craig, and I know you're a big fan of the Mego style Trek figures.
Yeah, it was very hard for me to not leave Vegas with some of the reproductions that they've done.
Yeah, I don't know if this necessarily will interest you, but this is a kind of it looks kind of neat, and I'm tempted to pick up a few of these, but they've issued new Mego style Trek figures, but they are the actors and actresses from The Big Bang Theory dressed up in the original series Mego style. So
they've done a lot of those Big Bang Theory Star Trek crossovers. Didn't they do pop figures too?
They did. They did do pop figures, and this is you've got Sheldon Cooper as Mr. Spock, of course. Leonard is the captain, and you've got all three of the girls, as well as Howard Wolowitz and Raj Koothrappali. Howard and Raj are in red shirts. Penny appears to be in a red dress, and the other two girls, Bernadette and Amy, are in blue uniforms. So very cool looking set together, and they are a little bit pricey though. So they're about $25 each. So I highly doubt I'll be picking up the full set.
Yeah. Hopefully they don't short box any of them either.
Yeah, you wonder who they would do that to. Maybe a couple of the girls they would short box or something like that. But
yeah, if they were really cruel, they would like short box Sheldon or something.
Oh, that would suck. That would suck because he actually has the ears too.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, they look really cool. But we'll talk a little bit more as they come out. If I wind up seeing any or picking any up, we'll mention them again.
Awesome
on the show. But interesting. I don't know if you knew this already or not, Craig, and I know we were planning to go to RetroCon, but Chris Doohan is going to be at RetroCon in Philadelphia.
Ah, cool.
At the end of September.
Yeah. We had a real brief chance to talk with Chris at his table, I think the last day of the convention, and seems like a really, really cool dude, and seems like he's really doing his dad right in terms of honoring his dad's memory by playing him on that Star Trek Continues. But also, his table seemed like it was really a celebration of his dad's life. And you also have the opportunity to buy screen-used dilithium crystals, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he's going to have more at the RetroCon.
Well, yeah, they're really, really, really small. So I wonder what, size crystal they broke up to make those little vials.
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe we can ask him when we see him at RetroCon.
Yeah, that's cool. That'll be cool. That's always a fun event, and it's cool to see a Star Trek tie-in there.
Yeah. So, are you ready to delve into the Ultimate Computer?
You got it.
All right. The original airing of the Ultimate Computer was March 8th of 1968. Remaster, February 9th, 2008.
And the NBC press release from February 7th, 1968 reads, Captain Kirk has no choice but to participate in an exercise which replaces him as commanding officer of the Enterprise in the Ultimate Computer on NBC Television Network Star Trek Colorcast, Friday, March 8th.
All right, we will start our scene-specific commentary. Cue up your DVDs or what have you, and we will start in 3, 2, 1.
So this is really one of the things where the remasters really shine in. The fact that in the original episode, they reused the space station from The Trouble with Tribbles, but here they were able to create a brand new space station.
Yeah, with another Constitution class vessel attached to it. So we've seen essentially 2 Enterprises on screen at the same time. And the great thing about this episode and the remastered effects is that we're going to see a whole bunch of Enterprises on the screen. And, here's another Commodore rank Starfleet officer, and he's got a different logo on his shirt. It looks like a sun or a flower. I'm sure it's a sun.
Yeah. But it's really wild that we're deep in the second season at this point now, and that hasn't really, established itself in terms of what the official Starfleet designation was.
Yeah, but the one thing I did notice about him though is when you see a wide shot, he's got a different rank insignia on his sleeves. Mm-hmm. He's got like a solid gold thick band, whereas everybody else has the thinner bands with different combinations on them to denote who they are.
Yeah.
But one thing that really kind of stuck out to me was that this guy beamed aboard the Enterprise without any sort of, forewarning or permission at all. They just told Kirk, oh yeah, he's beaming onto the ship right now. He can be in your transporter room right now.
Yeah, and Kirk sort of turned off his console, and it's a good thing he didn't jettison the pod.
Yeah, really. He might have hit the wrong button. Might have sent the pod right into the space station. But we're getting some other interesting information. So we just found out that Mr. Spock is, quote, an A7 computer expert.
Yeah.
So that's he's got a classification as an A7 computer expert. So very, very interesting there. And the reason why that came up is they're bringing aboard a Dr. Richard Daystrom, who has invented a computer that can essentially control an entire starship on its own without the need of much manpower, if any at all. And Kirk seems a little bit concerned about this, but an interesting side remark from Mr. Spock is that this Dr. Daystrom designed all of the computer systems on board the ship.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so interesting that one thing I really like about this episode is that it gives backstory about the ship.
Yeah.
We're used to getting backstory about the characters. We get to learn about Kirk's past and Spock's past and McCoy's past, but we don't always get information about the ship. Mm-hmm. And this episode gives us some cool information about the ship. And
yeah, I actually think that now would be a good time to sort of talk about where this episode came from, because it didn't come from their normal pool of writers. It came from a guy outside of Hollywood.
Yeah, Lawrence Wolfe, right?
Yeah, who was a mathematician. And he had just an interest in computers, and he wrote this episode, and he was buddies with Ray Bradbury.
Oh, good old Ray Bradbury.
Who he convinced to slip the script to Gene Roddenberry. Mm-hmm. And we can only assume that Roddenberry liked it enough to have it developed into an episode of Star Trek. And that's where DC Fontana came in. And she did what seems like a pretty healthy rewrite on it, I guess, to really Star Trek it up. And then it was directed by John Meredith Lucas, who we've seen this season before, and we'll also see again not too far from now. He was the writer of Patterns of Force and the Changeling, and here he's directing, which is he's I think one of the only guys that wrote and directed separately. And we're next going to see him directing the Enterprise incident. So kind of a neat, pedigree for this episode. It's neat to see that someone from the public sector contributed a script that was used on the original series. We know that Next Generation took a lot of fan submissions for their episodes, but the original series was really still developing a lot of the stuff in-house.
Yeah. And one of the really cool thing about this, and this is another thing that Star Trek was famous for back then, is not only did DC Fontana, do a substantial rewrite, she also brought in the social commentary aspect of man's fear of being replaced by automation in the workplace. And that was something that was happening a bit in the 60s and has continued to this day.
I was just going to say that.
And here we've already seen Kirk has gotten a little bit upset by the fact that they've taken away all of his crew save 20 people.
Yeah.
And they're replacing every one of those 410 other crewmen with this M5 computer system.
Yeah.
And Kirk is pretty incredulous about this, and of course he questions it, as does McCoy, but Spock, of course, seems to be intrigued and supportive of this computer coming in. So this episode also has some really great character interplay between Spock and McCoy specifically.
Yeah. Especially at the end. I can't wait to talk about that.
Oh, the end is fantastic, but let's not skip too far ahead.
Yeah. So here we've got William Marshall playing Daystrom.
Yes.
And he died back in 2003 at the age of 78. And I got to tell you, I love William Marshall, and I want to go on record real quick or promote the excellent work that he did, and don't snicker or laugh at this, in Blackula and Scream, Blackula Scream, the sequel to Blackula, where he played Count Dracula, in essence. Those are more than exploitation movies, in my opinion, or blaxploitation movies. And to have an actor of William Marshall's caliber play that character of Mama Waldy in Blackula is just great. If you haven't seen the movie, definitely search it out. It's worth watching. And William Marshall is just such a fascinating actor to watch. He's tall. He's got that like almost James Earl Jones-like voice. And he's got a really, really interesting presence about him. And in this episode, I think he does a great job playing sort of a cold, sort of just mind-driven person.
Absolutely. I agree. I was going to say what a wonderful job he did in this episode. And
it's like he's all intellect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this episode does a great job of showcasing all of the actors who play a prominent role in this. And Kirk actually just threw out a line that I thought was great. And that line was, "There are certain things men must do to remain men.
Yeah.
And your computer would take that away."
Mm-hmm.
It echoed the sentiment of the time. And now we've got an incredible, incredible character moment between Kirk and McCoy walking down a hallway where Kirk is kind of doubting himself.
Yeah.
Saying, could I really be replaced by a computer? Am I really afraid of this? And, McCoy, you have all of my psychological profile data. Am I really that petty? Am I really that shallow that I'm afraid that I'm going to be replaced by a computer and have nothing else to do with my life?
Yeah, and and McCoy says something to the effect of the fact that you're thinking that pretty much explains or proves that you're not.
Yeah, and he actually also says that, all these other guys, we've seen other guys lose their jobs to machines, but your job is different. So no machine could be the captain of the Enterprise or any other ship for that matter. And that
am I that petty? Right there. That's the line. Am I that petty? And,
am I that petty? Yeah.
McCoy says, if you're asking yourself that, obviously you're not, which you're so right in this interaction. It's a great moment between those two characters.
Yeah, this show has been great for that. And there's a really great close up of an addition that they made to the captain's chair. They put an M5 control module on the left side of Kirk's chair with a couple of different switches on it, I guess, to activate and deactivate the M5 computer. But a couple of side notes that we kind of glossed over. There were 4 other M computers, so it was M1 through M4, all of which were unsuccessful. So that's why this is the M5 computer. Kirk asked Dr. Daystrom earlier, so that's an interesting note.
Oh, yeah, totally.
This guy, who is supposedly a computer genius, had 4 major failed experiments, prior to this. So interesting to know that. And, we've got Spock, of course, is still praising the M5 computer, which is interesting that you have a juxtaposition between Spock and Kirk. Usually Spock and Kirk don't disagree as much. It's usually McCoy and Kirk or McCoy and Spock, but Spock is sort of taking an opposite tack to Kirk in this episode. But he'll switch around shortly. But there was a question that I wanted to ask you.
Oh, I love this. I love when you ask questions.
So, thinking the concept of putting a computer in control of the Enterprise, right? And I mean, the concept really is we're going to put a computer on the ship that's going to do everything all these people can do. We're going to take all the people off and let them go out and live their lives and not have to worry about exploring space or getting killed somewhere out there or being in a flying tin can.
Yeah.
But, from an exploration standpoint, I could see that being okay. A computer flying from planet to planet, doing some scans, recording some data.
Yeah, we do that now.
Planet. Right. But do you think that the M5 could really replace Kirk in all of these, and the crew in all of these scenarios that they've been in prior to this?
I mean, you're discovering strange new worlds, but you're not really interacting with those strange new worlds. And the M5 isn't going to be able to seduce and woo and have relations with green-skinned aliens.
No, and think about it. Think of it. The M5 is flying through the galaxy in the Enterprise and runs into the Doomsday Machine. What is the M5 going to do? Do you think it could handle that kind of an encounter?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. It probably would have just flown itself into it, right?
Yeah, who knows? But we're going to find out later that the M5 is programmed to defend itself, so I don't know if it would commit suicide in that way. But I was just thinking to myself, what would the unmanned Enterprise with the M5 in it do in the face of some of these, like, what if it ran into Baylock? What would have happened then? I don't think that Dr. Daystrom has taken, or Starfleet for that matter, has taken all of those possibilities into account.
Yeah, well, what the other funny thing is they're quote unquote piloting this this machine on the Enterprise, where you'd think that they would take a starship that maybe had a less experienced captain, or maybe that's why they chose the Enterprise, because Kirk is Kirk, and I guess maybe they wanted to see if a machine could replace somebody as significant or as accomplished as Kirk.
That's a great theory. That's a great theory. I mean, he's widely touted as being the best captain in Starfleet and
he's the best
having
of the best.
Best crew.
Yeah.
So could the Enterprise crew, the best crew in Starfleet, be replaced by this machine? It's a good question.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, at the end of the day, the computer is still going to need humans to do the stuff that it can't do.
Right. The computer is not going to be capable of the level of diplomacy.
Yeah.
That Kirk and company would. They wouldn't be. The computer couldn't beam down to the planet necessarily and negotiate, or it couldn't save the miners from the Horda. Right?
Yeah. Well, the only person that really has job security here, I guess, is what, Scotty.
Yeah, you need somebody to enact repairs, right?
You would still need a really, really good engineer.
More than likely, and potentially a science officer.
Yeah. So here now we have an interesting thing going on where they're preparing a landing party, and Daystrom reaches out to M5 for recommendations.
Yes, and Kirk and McCoy are deemed non-essential.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I love how they play this tense musical cue when Kirk and McCoy are named non-essential. So it almost wants the viewer to think something evil is happening.
Yeah.
When it's really just a computer making a tactical decision based on data, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting choice for a musical cue, because it kind of sends an interesting message that I didn't really get from that scene. I just thought it was like, well, a computer is actually kind of following protocol.
Yeah.
And saying, well, the captain and the doctor shouldn't be at risk in this if they're not needed.
Mm-hmm. And we're seeing signs that the Enterprise is really just being operated like a 23rd century smartphone here.
Yeah.
It's shutting down power where it's not needed, even in living quarters, with the rationale that at that moment they're unoccupied.
Yes, and well, speaking of being unoccupied, the decks that were deactivated were decks 4 and 6, which we've just learned are living quarters.
Okay, yeah.
So a little bit more information about the ship itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really cool that we get to know, well, decks 4 and 6 are where the people actually have their rooms.
Yeah, and then you got to wonder what deck 5 does.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll find out later on. I think we find out what deck 3 does in a little bit.
Well, maybe deck 5 is like a buffer between 4 and 6, so the people walking around on 6 don't interrupt. If they were directly over, if the living quarters were directly over each other, you'd have like an apartment situation where somebody's got really heavy feet.
Yeah, or someone's throwing a party. There'd be a big, like midnight kegger. It's great stuff. So back on the bridge.
Mm-hmm. And we learn that all the sick bay systems are shut down.
Right, because no one's going to get sick.
Yeah.
But very, the M5 is being extremely efficient in shutting down these systems. So we're getting some ships now that are coming into range, and the M5, it's the Excalibur and Lexington, 2 more Enterprise clones, 2 more Constitution class ships, and we're going to have a little bit of a surprise attack.
Yeah.
Coming against the Enterprise. But I love the fact that we're seeing a lot of other Starfleet ships. We've always talked about the fact that there must be other ships roaming around out there. You wonder to yourself what these other ships are doing, when they're not here in this episode. Where are the Excalibur and the Lexington normally? Are they out doing the same type of 5-year mission that the Enterprise is doing?
Exploring the same not so strange new worlds that the Enterprise has been interacting with.
Yeah, stopping at the same space stations. You're having fist fights with the same Klingons in the bars. I love that Sulu's getting some screen time in this too.
I was going to say later on we have what is a shot that really, really makes me smile, which is you get some really great interaction between Sulu and Chekhov, and it just feels right to see those two at the helm there.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't take them off the ship. And by the way, speaking of remastered effects, I want to remark while we just saw this, I love that they show the blue light of the phaser reflecting off the hull of the ship.
Yeah.
That's such a neat effect. I mean, it's not like what I would think is a necessary thing, but I love the fact that they took the opportunity in the remaster to just add that little bit of extra detail.
Yeah.
To just make it look cooler.
Yeah. I'm sure there was an artist involved in that who really went that extra step to add some some realism to what is really an incredibly mind-blowing, unreal visual.
Yeah, and again, I'll say something that I've said a million times over, and that is that this episode, I think, showcases it really well, that these remastered ship effects don't take you out of the episode at all. I absolutely love the fact that they look like they fit perfectly, and they don't feel like something that was tacked on later that ruins your immersion.
Yeah, well, the only thing, and it's funny, I noticed it watching this episode actually, is the closing credits. All the footage they used is from the original non-remastered effects. So you see these planets that you'll never see when you're watching the remastered episodes, and that's when you all of a sudden say, "Oh, right, these are there." There's a lot of work involved in these, and it's just a shame that they didn't have everything done prior to going to air, because then they could have fixed up the closing credits. But as we've talked about with air dates, they were making these as they were releasing them.
Yeah. Well, and we just passed another of what I think are pretty significant character moments in this episode, and that was a kind of a sidebar discussion between Kirk and Spock on the performance of the N5 computer on this little simulated exchange. And Spock, although he was impressed by the performance of the M5, he went out of his way to say that he wouldn't want to serve under a computer, and a ship requires loyalty to one man, and nothing can replace that man, and nothing can replace that loyalty or that man. And I think that shows Spock's dedication to Kirk.
Yeah.
I love that. That was a phenomenal moment between the two characters. I think that really illustrates, better than a lot of other episodes, the respect that Spock has for the captain,
right,
and Kirk as a person.
Oh, totally.
So, and we just seen the Kirk being referred to as Captain Dunsel, which was quite an insult. Kirk walked off the bridge, and what Spock explained that as a term that the Starfleet Academy used to reference a part or a person that serves no useful purpose.
Yeah, that's cold.
Yeah, so McCoy felt it necessary to show up in Kirk's quarters, which looks significantly different than other times we've seen them, with some booze.
Yeah.
The drink called Finnegal's Folly.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was Romulan ale, but now that you look at it, it's kind of green.
Yeah.
Not blue, so it's definitely not Romulan ale. So it Finnegal, I guess, some sort of maybe an Irish drink.
Yeah.
And it looks a little greenish.
Mm-hmm.
And McCoy's got a pinky ring on.
Yeah, he's definitely macked out.
Does he typically wear a pinky ring? I don't recall that.
Neither do I. And you'd think that that doctors wouldn't really wear anything on their hands.
No, you wouldn't think. And this, by the way, I think is another exceptional character moment.
Yeah, and it's a poem that's referenced at least in one of the movies, if memory serves.
Star Trek 5.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Star Trek 5. So Kirk is now, he's referencing a poem. He's philosophizing about a naval vessel and a starship essentially being the same thing. Even if you take away the wind and the water, the vessel is still the same. It's still your vessel, right? And you can feel it. And this is really nailing home Kirk's bond with the ship.
Mm-hmm.
He feels that it's his ship. It feels like a part of it. And we've heard in the past how much he loved the Enterprise and how attached to it was. But I think that was a really great way to reemphasize that in a more philosophical, poetic way.
Oh yeah, definitely, and it's great, really. And I know we're focused on the original series, original 5-year mission here, but it's really great to watch this entire original series cast age up through the movies, and including the final movies they did, and see these characters dealing with the different stages of life. It's really, really great. You see at one point Kirk as a father, and then you see the crew dealing with, what happens when you're considered no longer useful. It's really fascinating that this show was able to explore those ideas as the movies, progressed, and that's something we'll get to eventually. But it's really neat to see the seeds of that this far back in this episode, where you have, Kirk doubting himself, or worrying that he may one day become obsolete.
That's a great point. Great point. I hadn't even thought through that before, and that's awesome. Now I'm really looking forward to getting to some of this later stuff.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, that's the great thing about a series that ran for as long as this did, in terms of being a franchise. I mean, of course, we know that the series ended after 3 seasons, but they continued to tell stories.
They did, and they continue to tell them to this day and beyond.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's something where I start to get a little, I start to question Kirk a little bit here. Is it the fact that Kirk's under orders that they have to sort of run through this M5 pilot program? But it seems to me like Kirk would have pulled the plug on a lot of things a lot sooner.
I think this incident that just happened with this ore freighter, the Woden, which I've actually mentioned in a prior episode.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the Woden was another duplicate of another ship that we saw earlier. But glossing over that point, the M5 computer has just essentially destroyed an unmanned ore freighter ship, and I love how McCoy is just on the attack here.
Oh yeah,
he's really digging into Dr. Daystrom about the M5 needlessly destroying another ship, and what would have happened if there was a crew aboard that ship. So something else that I wanted to mention to you real quick, that before the M5 destroyed the Woden, Spock was monitoring the weapons that were being armed, and he said they were photon torpedoes at full power. I didn't realize that photon torpedoes had power settings. I thought phasers had power settings, but I wasn't sure that photon torpedoes had any sort of a minimum or maximum setting. I figured you fired a torpedo is a torpedo.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's the speed that they're launched at, which...
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
See, so this is really where... does Kirk have the authority at this point to just say... Well, he is giving the authority to turn it off.
Yeah, he is pressuring Daystrom to turn the machine off, and he's actually authorized Scotty in this unfortunate red shirt to remove the power source, and the red shirt just got vaporized.
Yeah. See, this is really where I think Kirk would draw a pretty hard line.
Well, I think he has no choice right now. He can't turn the computer off. It can't be deactivated. It's now proven that it will kill people to keep itself on. In fact, it shot Kirk with a little ray as they walked through the door.
Yeah, it gave him a little tap.
Yeah, to keep him away. Notice it didn't kill him.
Yeah.
It killed the red shirt guy, of course. I wonder if Kirk was wearing a red shirt, if he'd have gotten vaporized too.
I really like Scotty's concern here, because you can see sort of Scotty's investment or ownership he's taken of the ship as well, and you can tell that it really pains him to see the ship out of his control.
Yes, I got that from this episode too. And there's many times in this episode where he's just kind of shakes his head, throws his hands up, and says, "Oh God, I can't. There's nothing I can do. My hands are tied."
Yeah.
At this point, there's engineering level 3. By the way, Spock just mentioned that they could try to divert to some sort of a manual control from engineering level 3. So I guess deck 3, or maybe engineering has separate levels, but level 3 is where some manual controls are located. But something that is going to pop up later. I mean, they said earlier that there were 20 people on the ship, and we just lost one. And later on, and this is I love to talk about continuity things in this show, because this show is sort of panned for lapses in continuity, but later on there will be a reference to 19 people being on the ship.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So clap of hands for DC Fontana there, remembering that there were 20 and you just subtracted one, and now we're going to be at 19. So
yeah,
I was glad that that little thing that made it through.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Yeah. Another great character moment here between McCoy and Daystrom. Daystrom just really seems to be, even though this thing has killed a person now, he still is defending his invention.
Yeah.
And McCoy is really trying to hold his feet to the fire and say, listen, this thing is a murderer now. But, Daystrom's argument as well as defending itself.
Mm-hmm.
It perceived a threat. And even though the threat was not lethal, its response was lethal. So I kind of thought it was a tough argument to agree with.
Yeah. But, I mean, Daystrom is really acting like a parent protecting its child.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And he's coming up with any harebrained excuse, to try to talk McCoy and Kirk out of deactivating the M5 computer. And he's going to kind of go on a bit of a tirade here about why he invented the M5. And it sounds like a noble cause. I mean, taking people out of danger, out of spaceships, not exposing them to the dangers of space and alien worlds, and sending a computer in their place so that they can actually, stay behind and work on, greater things.
Yeah.
For the human race. And it sounds very, very noble, and I would agree with it if it worked perfectly.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it seems like, and we haven't even gotten the full story yet. Daystrom hasn't told us everything about M5 at this point. But we're learning a little bit more about Daystrom right now. So he won a Nobel Prize and the Z Magni Prize, which I guess is a different prize.
In his early 20s.
Yeah, at the age of 24.
Yeah. I
thought it was very interesting that they still have Nobel Prizes in the 23rd century.
So they're really sort of driving home what kind of life someone lives when they have some of their greatest accomplishments at a young age.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point because, I mean, I guess if you have successes very, very early on in your life and you're not able to maintain that level of success into your later years, what does that do to you mentally?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you're not as good? Do you feel, like you've let yourself down? Or in the case of Dr. Daystrom, it seems that he kind of starts to lose it in a way. Like he doesn't have the same grip on reality that he may have had years and years ago, that he's so desperate to achieve another level of success that matches or exceeds that he experienced in his younger years, that he's willing to sacrifice some lives in the process. It's kind of questionable, and I wonder, what will I feel like in 20 years if I'm not at, a better place than I'm in today? Mm-hmm. Will I feel like a failure? Will desperation set in? It's a very interesting thing to think about. Mm-hmm. And look, here's a great example. Here's Daystrom here. He's really upset, and he's actually resorting to physical means to attempt to stop Scotty and Spock from deactivating M5's control over the ship. He was actually reaching up and trying to grab a hold of Spock. Yeah. To pull him out of the Jeffries tube and stop them from what they're doing. And look at the look of dejection. He just kind of walks off. Yep. Thinking that the M5 has been taken offline.
But of course, we've still got a lot of episode left. So
yeah, we do have quite a bit left.
Here's that shot I was talking about, by the way, where you see Sulu and Chekhov just smiling and looking at each other, knowing that powers being restored to them in terms of letting them do their jobs.
A little comedy there too.
Yeah.
A little bit of levity. There's been a few little shining moments of levity in this episode. That, of course, was one of them. And you know, we've got some Kirk and Spock levity. We've got McCoy and Spock levity. So I love that DC Fontana threw in some little breaks in the mood, because this is a pretty heavy episode.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emotion and a lot of stress in this episode for just about everybody.
Yeah.
So I think this episode, to me, even though it's a bottle episode, it's one of the more, you know, dialogue packed and you know, stress packed episodes that I've seen in quite a while.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like the M5 has become sentient enough to try to fool humans.
Yeah, and it seems like it did a pretty good job.
Yeah, it made them waste an hour of their time in a futile effort. So I think we're going to get some information now about the M5 that we didn't get previously. Spock has been analyzing its operations, and he said that it exhibits almost human behavior. And now we're going to learn that Dr. Daystrom, who's been referring to his new approach to computer control, actually entails the imprinting of human memory engrams on a computer. So he's essentially made almost a human machine that I guess also possesses human flaws.
Yeah, and this is pretty awesome, because if you look at the path of science and technology right now, there are people that are actively looking for ways to imprint themselves onto memory.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or
your consciousness in a way.
Yeah, and you know, it was kind of neat to watch this episode with the knowledge of what's going on now and what we're probably only a couple decades away from.
Maybe. And
to see it being addressed here on a show in the 60s, which I'm sure at the time it was an incredibly radical idea. I don't know, for me it was just really neat to see them again sort of really, really far ahead of the curve, and who knows how much Star Trek inspired what's going on now. That's another thing. It's funny that people say, oh, you know, the stuff that Star Trek predicted is coming true, whereas it could be like, well, people are trying to make the stuff that Star Trek predicted come true.
Yeah. I like that this story is similar to a story we've seen earlier thematically, and you know, that being the computer that's semi-human. So we saw earlier in What Are Little Girls Made Of, the transference of a human consciousness into an android body. This is a bit different, but similar.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that Star Trek can take these concepts and examine them from different angles.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh, by the way, the chair that the Commodore is sitting in, I think, is the captain's chair from the ISS Enterprise from the Mirror episode. Cool. So they recycled that chair. You know, and this is interesting because in this episode, they said there were 20 crew members on board. 19 of them are still alive, and we've got almost all of them actually identified.
Yeah.
So through the naming process we saw earlier, through the landing parties, we know that aside from the usual, the Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Scott, Sulu, Chekhov, Uhura, we've also got a few other crew members that have been name dropped. They were Harper, Phillips, Roland, Brent, Hadley, Leslie, and I think Carstairs. So we've only got a couple, and 2 security guards who are gonna show up in a little bit. So we've got almost everybody, and a nurse, I believe, who were identified as being on the ship. So pretty cool that a lot of these people had names. I mean, 430 people on the ship. I wonder how many of them have actually been named over the years. But pretty cool. They actually threw out some names of other crew members, and Kirk knew who these people were.
Yeah, which is funny because we've had other instances where crew members have presented themselves and he hasn't known them.
Yeah. Good point.
But I guess it's how new somebody is, and how up to date Kirk is on the I guess the crew logs.
Yeah, I wonder where Marlena is. Maybe she got left on the space station.
Yeah, unless we're in the Mirror universe, she was sadly probably considered non-essential, whereas I'm sure Mirror Kirk would have said, "Oh, she's very essential."
Barry Russo, who plays Commodore Wesley, interestingly enough, was in my favorite episode, The Devil in the Dark.
Right.
He played Commander Giotto.
All right. Yeah. So this is another episode. Last week, I guess we saw the guy from Dagger of the Mind.
Yes. Yeah. We got some great repeats here, and the funny last week and they're both Starfleet.
Yeah.
Captains or higher. So pretty cool that they came back in other roles, as Starfleet officers. Also, Sean Morgan, who plays Harper in this episode, was also in Balance of Terror.
Yeah, very neat.
And he was also in Return of the Archons and the Tholian Web, which we haven't covered yet.
Mm-hmm. So now we've got Daystrom talking to the M5.
Yep.
Trying to convince it that its line of action is not good. And I didn't do detailed research here, but I recall reading that James Doohan provided the voice of the M5.
He did.
Okay.
He did. As well as a message from a Starfleet Commodore Enright, who is we're gonna hear over the speaker shortly.
And it really sort of showcases what a great voice actor Doohan was. We know that he did voices on the animated series, but here, watching this episode, I didn't really pick up James Doohan at all.
I kind of felt like it was that I had an idea that it was him later on when the Commodore comes over the intercom. Mm-hmm. It's sort of because he had a little bit of a Scottish accent, but not as heavy.
Okay.
As Scotty, and I thought to myself, I wonder if that's James Doohan, and I looked it up, and sure enough, it was. But for the most part, you really can't detect that his voice acting is him. So, and in the animated series, we'll know that even more.
Yeah. So here's William Marshall just doing some just tremendous acting, in my opinion.
Oh, spectacular. And notice that he's having a conversation with a computer in plain language.
Yeah.
He's not saying, computer, calculate course. Mm-hmm. He's doing something that we are still, working towards in our modern day. We're getting there.
Yeah.
We have these digital assistants on our smartphones that you can talk to in semi-natural language, and most of the time it works pretty well. But we're not at this level.
Yeah.
That he's at. I mean, he's actually monologuing into a computer.
Yeah, this is straight up advanced AI.
Yeah, for sure. And this is a fantastic, fantastic scene.
Mm-hmm. And we're starting to see a little bit of Daystrom's disdain for where he's ended up and how he's been treated.
Yeah, and you're seeing a bit of his breakdown here. I mean, he's really
so great.
He's selling it so well. I mean, this is the stuff that I think made the original series so great. Oh,
I agree 100%.
Oh, the acting is so stellar in a lot of these scenes. Mm-hmm. I love that that Kirk comes up here, and I love the way that Daystrom turns and starts to. He's just incredulous.
Yeah.
When Kirk we're gonna says it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna get another great selling of the nerve pinch.
Yo, I love this. There it is, and he actually can walk him over to the security guards.
Yeah.
While nerve pinched, but. Did you catch the scream from Kirk earlier? He's like, Daystrom!
Oh, yeah.
Kind of reminded me of the Khan scream.
Yeah.
By the way.
And I really love that sequence because you had the Trinity there. You had McCoy sort of saying to Kirk, hey, you've got to step in here. He's about to have a breakdown. Mm-hmm. And then Spock with the assist there. So really a case of the core three all being factors in that sequence.
Yeah, great observation.
Mm-hmm.
Great observation. I didn't necessarily pick up on that same thing, but that was spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
There are 65 people dead, by the way, between two of the other ships so far that we know of.
Somebody's losing their job here, right?
Oh, for sure. And we're going to find out that the entire crew of the Excalibur is dead.
Oof. Can you imagine what an S-storm this created?
Yeah, especially this was supposed to be a war game.
Oh my God.
Everything was supposed to be simulated.
Yeah.
And here the M5 has essentially destroyed and killed almost 500 people.
God, this whole thing had to be covered up, right?
Oh, you would think they would definitely try to bury this one.
Blame it on the Klingons or...
Yeah, somebody. Romulan showed up, new weapon. They took a bunch of us out, but we prevailed.
Oh my God.
Man. Yeah, a whole ship full of Gorn showed up.
the Gorn won't mind being the villain.
Yeah, they were double axe handled the entire crew. But here, by the way, here's another, I'll use the word trope again. I know some of our listeners love the fact that I use the word trope.
Yeah.
But here's another reused trope of Kirk versus the machine.
Yeah.
Where he's actually going to destroy a machine with his own words.
Yeah.
No physical action necessary. He's going to talk a machine into killing itself.
Yeah. Which
spectacular.
We've gone down this road before.
Oh, yeah.
And I love it. I'll never get tired of seeing Kirk screw with computer minds.
Oh, no. And I love the tight close-up.
Yeah.
The really tight close-up. That is brilliant. With Shatner just delivering these lines with conviction.
Yeah.
Again, people rag on Shatner for his overacting, but I think these moments are so great.
Yeah. No, you'll get no argument from me.
No, anybody, I mean, I'm sure there's moments where he overacted, but let me tell you, there are so many more moments where he delivered really compelling and well-written dialogue in such a convincing way.
Right on.
That I think it really overrides some of the hammier moments.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So now M5 is completely disengaged.
Yep. And Spock is saying this machine is committing suicide, so it's essentially dropped the shields and left the ship defenseless with the attack force under orders from Starfleet.
Yeah.
To destroy the Enterprise.
Yeah, and this is where we really get the human perspective, or what a human brings to captaining a ship.
Yep.
Is how Kirk decides to handle things here.
Exactly. And, I'm going to jump the gun a little bit and say his explanation for his actions here really illustrate why the machine couldn't necessarily do what he's doing now. He is using his innate knowledge of the captain of the attack force.
Yeah, his experience with that captain, yeah.
Yeah, to drive his current actions. And he knows Commodore Wesley so well that he's going to gamble that Wesley won't just obliterate him if he sends out a certain signal by saying, hey, listen, I'm defenseless, my shields are down, my ship is dead. He's telling Scotty to cut the power of the ship completely to appear dead.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows that Wesley won't blow the ship up if it appears disabled.
Yeah.
Brilliant move. I mean, would the M5 be able to make that type of a decision?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's funny here because Wesley's reaction is human as well, and or his decision is a decision that a computer couldn't make.
Exactly. So I think the overall message at the end is that the computer, while it was good at what it did, and taking into account something Spock said earlier, that computers make exceptionally good servants to humans, that these ships would not be nearly as effective.
Yeah.
Without their human and Vulcan crews.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a little bit of a Trinity moment here, a little explanation, and some comedy coming up to round out the show.
Oh, I mean, yeah, the final interaction there has to be what, in my opinion, unless I'm missing something, it's got to be the most sort of overt, biting interaction between the two of them. It almost borders on hostile.
Yeah, I'm surprised nobody took a swing in this turbo lift scene. It's great stuff, though.
Yeah.
You know, this is the kind of stuff that makes the show so great. I love these comedic endings.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you've got this interplay between these three terrific characters and three terrific actors who played them. And, you got McCoy insinuating that Spock would love to be a computer or work with a computer or replace humans with computers.
Yeah. Here comes you saying...
I'd love to see McCoy. Yeah, he'd love to see McCoy replaced by a computer that spouted an endless array of illogic.
Yeah, really, really, just a really biting sort of comment from Spock there.
Yeah. And here's my favorite part, where Kirk says, take us back to the space station at Warp 2 and leave all these other disabled ships there to die. All right, we're out of here.
They'll be the cleanup crew.
Yeah. Oh, great stuff.
All right, so here we are at the end, and I guess it's time to have our regularly scheduled essential discussion.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you that this may seem a little bit out of character for me to say something like this, but between the information we've gotten about the Enterprise in this episode, so we learned where the living quarters are. We learned that level 3 in engineering, what that was, and marry that with these incredible character moments that we've got from this episode. I feel like I have to say this is essential.
Yeah, I have to agree. I hadn't even keyed in on all the Enterprise stuff that you had mentioned in terms of the knowledge of the Enterprise we're gaining. But for me, there was enough going on here character-wise to really validate this or make this an essential episode. And also, I don't like to do this, but the Daystrom character is just such a fascinating watch that if I was on any kind of fence, that would have pushed me over. But yeah, I give it the essential vote as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's some spectacular acting in this episode that makes it so well worth watching. So, and of course, I guess everybody who's listening to this has watched this already. So I don't think saying that encouraging people to watch it is gonna make anybody who hasn't watched it. But it's worth rewatching.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Totally. Right.
So that brings us to the end of episode 53, and we will be back next week with episode 54. And if you want to interact with us, we are all over the interwebs, Twitter, TTT_pod. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/the Tricorder Transmissions, and we have our own website, tricordertransmissions.com. And we have our brand new forums, our message forums on our website. Jump on. You can read the forums all you want without signing up for anything. So don't feel like you have to give us any personal information in order to see everything going on there. If you'd like to interact with us, you do have to sign up. So, rest assured, we don't use your email address for anything nefarious. In fact, I guarantee you neither one of us will ever even look at it. So sign up and talk back with us and let us know what you think about The Ultimate Computer or any one of our other episodes. We would love to talk back and forth with you.
Oh, totally.
All right. So we'll see everybody next week.
All right. Take care.
According to Starfleet records, there were 12 Constitution-class starships, and the Enterprise was one of them. In this episode, we get to see 4 of the other vessels in the fleet. Now, of course, we couldn't go to the expense of creating 4 new models to be used in the shots where the Enterprise is being attacked. Instead, our special effects team simply shot the model of the Enterprise, quadrupled the image, and presto, 4 ships. If you look closely, you'll notice that we didn't even bother to change the blinking pattern of the lights. All 4 of the ship's lights blink on and off in unison. The Ultimate Computer is a story that was born of the Industrial Revolution mindset. That is, that man is in danger of being replaced in the workplace by machines, whether it's the original punch card machines at IBM or the robots in an auto assembly plant or M5 on the Enterprise. We've developed a fear of being replaced by our own creations. In some ways, it's even reminiscent of the railroad boom in the late 1800s. Except in that case, it wasn't fear of machines replacing man. It was fear of low-cost immigrant labor replacing Americans. In any of these scenarios, the bottom line is our fear of being rendered useless, the fear of us all becoming Captain Dunsel's.